You ever hear that saying, whatever happens, happens, or if it was meant to be, it was meant to be, or maybe things that happen were meant to happen, or amor fati, or whatever the heck that thing is? Well, I've heard that
Love of
too.
one's fate. Yeah.
Yeah. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about what does that even mean? So, this is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
Yeah, I was thinking about this last week, and people say like if it was meant to if it happens, then it was clearly meant to happen, and if it doesn't happen, then it was clearly not meant to happen. And I was like, how can you be so certain?
Or if it doesn't happen, to happen for a reason or something, or like
Hmm.
something like that. Yeah.
Oh, dude,
It's
like
interesting.
when
Yeah.
really bad things happen, people are like, well, it happens for a reason.
Yeah. Right. It always happens for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly it's a way to like make ourselves feel better, right? I think sometimes I do wonder because, like, we talk about the dichotomy of control often enough, right? Like, what's within our control, what's not. Pretty much everything isn't except for us, our
Hmm.
thoughts, our responses, our actions, what have you, how we perceive things. But it might be, a way for us to kind of see control in a world that we can't control, or see order in a world that we can't control, Because, like, look, like I was thinking, like, when you first said this, I was thinking, like, applying to jobs and stuff, because you'll hear it a lot when people are like, well, if it's meant to happen, it's meant to happen, kind of thing, like, and in a certain sense, it is like, I can't control the choices these other, I can't control, all I can do is submit my application, do my best, and hopefully get it. And so I think in that sense, it is like a nice way of kind of recognizing what's not in our power, but like, so if it's meant to, and I don't know
Hmm.
if you consider it like a universe. I don't know if there's like a universal like thing there going on too or not.
Well, it's one of these things where it could be used to just breed complacency. Because it's like, well, it's not up to me. So, like one
Oh
of those
yeah.
things like job applications. So it's just like, well, if nobody's hiring me, then it's clearly not, it's not meant to be.
Yeah.
But it's like, did you press quick apply 5 times, or did you send out hundreds of like personally tailored applications? And it's like,
Yeah.
maybe that's why.
That is true. And I think that's one of the dangers though of a lot of things we do. Like a lot of things we do are like ways to kind of like explain things to make them bearable or understandable. But they're also dangerous because like they do run that risk of making us complacent or like, you know, turning us into victims or like we view the world as against us and stuff rather than like putting in effort and trying, and continuing to try even when things fail. Because like I think that is it is really dangerous because you don't want to be in that situation where you're like, like it's not me, it's everybody else's fault. That's
Hmm.
why things suck.
Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes find myself in a situation where I feel like I need to do more, but then I intentionally put the brakes on myself because I'm trying to kind of go against my nature somewhat because my nature is just like workaholic. And so,
It's hard, isn't it?
yeah, so I try and like stop that and then see what happens. It's an interesting thing because then I
You know
guess if
it's
it was meant to happen, it would happen.
whatever's going to happen would happen, right?
Mhm.
Do you ever wonder that, just on a when because like when you have those tendencies to like work, you feel like, it's like the more effort you put in, the more you're getting done, the better. And like there's a very close tie between your self-validation and like what you're producing. And it
Hmm.
sucks because then when you're not doing stuff, you get like anxious, nervous, and down because you don't have anything to do. And it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, it's terrible. It's hard to course correct that.
It's a tricky one. Yeah, because it's like when I was young, my first validation was like going and getting a job. Like I was good at it. And yeah,
Yeah.
that felt
It's
good.
fun to be good at things and do stuff.
Hmm.
It is.
Yep.
It's how we realize what we're capable of.
Hmm.
Marx always said we can only know our own powers once they're like in the world, right? You have to do stuff to know you can do it.
Hmm.
So I think, yeah,
Yeah. So then there's this other aspect of it that's like, all of man's problems come from his inability to sit still and do nothing. And in the Tao Te Ching, it talks about practice the art of doing nothing. And It's just, well, if you do nothing, then really anything that comes was clearly meant to be, or was it? Or
Yeah,
is it just
but the
random chance?
Dow sense of doing nothing is a tricky one though, because it's like it's they're very much against our normal, like especially like the Western sense of willing, right? Where like
Hmm.
I will something to happen and I make it happen, right? Because they view that as like going against the grain or going against the flow of the river. So their sense of doing nothing is not necessarily nothing, but it's like not that type of like willful action that's going to force against. It's going with the flow. And then things are meant to happen because they're literally the flow
Mm,
of the universe.
yeah.
Yeah. But
Or
it's
here's
tricky
another
because like go
here's
ahead, yeah.
another interesting thing. So like maybe we're just making up a story about it to make ourselves feel better, like what you were saying
I mean,
initially. Because I remember they
yeah.
did studies on people whose like I think it's the corpus callosum or whatever, like the joining of the two halves of the brain. It was like split, it was cut. And so basically you could tell these people to do something and they would do it, but they wouldn't remember that you told them. And then you would ask them why they did it, and they would come up with a story why they did it. But it was nothing related to the actual reason why. So it kind of, at least what they got from this experiment was that we just do stuff and then we come up with reasons why. And it's just
Oh,
like,
dude, most of the time after the fact. Yeah, it's weird, right? Like it's funny, like we justify and explain things and make up a tale later to then explain what happened and make ourselves feel like, we were the ones leading the show. It's
yeah.
funny. The yeah, that's what one thing I always liked about the existentialists is like the idea that like they think we're like meaning makers, and like we need we all want to be intelligible to ourselves and we want to live in an intelligible world. And that means creating stories, right? It means making up things about our role in the world itself, how, to explain things in a way that makes it bearable and livable, whatever that is. I mean, ideally it's better than, I guess being terrible or whatever. But yeah, the idea is like, we have to explain things for ourselves. And I think those phrases like if it was meant to be or, there's a reason, that's a way to kind of make that a nice coherent tale.
So here's another thing that I think of when I hear this, it was meant to be. It's like, okay, so humans have coated the earth in plastic. Was that meant to be?
Yeah, apparently it happened,
Yeah.
you know? Well, that's the other weird. Yeah, is it just saying whatever happened happened? Because I mean, like, whatever is. I mean, that's like a tautology. You can't get around that, you know? But like, if it is saying that, then it's an empty statement. Uh, yeah, it's weird. But yeah, it did happen. I mean, if it did happen, then it happened. And so therefore it was meant to happen
Hmm.
because it happened. That's the world we live in.
I mean, you would have to be crazy to argue otherwise because you would be arguing against reality.
Yeah, reality always wins.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is weird. Yeah. I never thought of it like that now. Now it's even more confusing.
It's a hard one to think about.
Maybe that is it though. Maybe it's a way of making a story about it, even about things that we like again have no control over, right? Like, yeah, the world's covered in plastic now, man.
It's
So
like it's like what kind of jerk would you have to be for like, you know, humans have caused so many thousands of species to go extinct, and it's like everything happens for a reason. It's
yeah,
like what
we didn't
kind
need
of
them.
jerk would say that?
This is the really hard thing though. It's like we have such short lives, and like, it is the other thing. Like so much of the things that happen in our lifetime, like, are things that were already going on, and the ball was already rolling. Yeah, like for sure, we definitely like our generations definitely contributed to like the pollution, the trash, and stuff. But like, we also it was already there when we started. The convenience was already baked into the system, and before we could even think on our own, we were already engaged in it. So it's like you get comfortable with something and it's like, oh man. So it's like it's hard too because it's like so much of like our lives are so short, so much of what's happening around us is stuff that's been going on for a long time. And
I
we're just a
still
part of it.
I still don't get it. Like I remember when I was a kid, grocery stores had paper bags. And it's like, oh no, save the trees. So they made plastic bags, which destroyed
Which
the
is worse.
ocean. Yeah. And then, but it's like, I don't understand why they don't go back to paper bags. Like they can plant
Yeah,
bamboo. It's like grass and make
stuff grows
paper
crazy. I
bags out
know.
of that, can't they? I
They
don't
can also
understand.
recycle paper. They can also recycle it fairly easily, I think. It's
Yeah,
fairly recyclable. I don't think you lose a ton,
yeah.
like,
I don't
but
know.
yeah, there's a whole, we don't need to get into all the thing. It's crazy. Like, a lot of it too is like companies didn't want to change, so they tried to put the onus on the individual. Like they made it people's responsibility to recycle. Like if you want the clean planet, it's on you to recycle. Make sure you recycle this Coke can or whatever, right? And in
Yeah.
reality, they didn't want to deal with it. So they put the pressure on individuals when they could have changed things very easily because they had the power to change the production line.
Hmm.
So it's like, yeah,
Plus, I'm curious about all these like recyclable heavy duty, or not the recycled, but like the heavy duty shopping bags that you have to buy now. Aren't they just like heavier
they're
duty
all plastic.
plastic? Yeah, it doesn't
That's
make
all they
sense
are.
to
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Oh, dude, and it's
It's
crazy
just
too because
like
like some
a
of
paper bag takes a million years to biodegrade. This one takes 5 million years.
Yeah, even longer. It's way thicker. Yeah, it's not a good system. I mean, the problem is we found plastics cheap, and it's like
Mm.
it's here. And it's here for a reason.
Well, dude, it was the 70s, and the same dudes selling life insurance were selling plastics. They're like, plastic, the wave of the future.
Really. They didn't even know it. It was crazy. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is weird. It's like
Well, it was meant to
meant
be.
to be. Yeah, it was meant to be.
All
Yeah, it's
right.
a tough one.
Yeah, well, anything else you'd like to include in this episode?
No, I don't. I think we're good. We
Yeah, I
just
think
need
we're done.
stories.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, uh, check out our other episodes, watch us on YouTube, and of course, leave glowing reviews, like 5-star awesome reviews on Apple Podcasts, because how could this not be a 5-star podcast, right?
You
But
also know our ranking systems, right? If it's not 5 stars, it doesn't count. Like
exactly.
it's not good.
It's 5 stars or don't leave one.
I
But
always like that with review systems. Like it's got to be five. It's like, well, can't people have an opinion that's like not five?
no,
It's like if they don't. Nope, because then it
no,
gets
you can
rated
leave your
bad.
opinion in text, but it's got to be 5 stars. You could say this
Yeah,
is a
have to.
garbage podcast, but make sure it's 5 stars. Anyways,
That's what matters.
that's all for this episode. We will catch you guys later. Have a good one. Until next time, I'm Randy. That's Danny. Later, Danny.
Later, Andy.